The night was cold, and the ruined marketplace lay silent under the pale glow of two alien moons. Shattered stalls stood like broken teeth, their cloth covers torn by wind and time. No voices, no footsteps, only the faint rustle of dust across stone. The human, a lone traveler, moved carefully through the abandoned streets, his boots echoing against cracked ground. He had come here searching for shelter, perhaps a place to rest, but instead he found emptiness still. Something in the silence felt wrong, as if the shadows were waiting for him, watching him. Then he heard it, a sound so soft, so fragile, it almost blended with the night. "Help me, please." He froze, his heart racing. The voice was not human. Its tone carried an alien softness, broken yet pleading. It came from the dark corner of a collapsed building. Cautiously, he stepped closer, his hand resting near the knife at his belt. The voice came again, weaker this time. "Help me stand again, human." He saw her then. A girl, though not like any girl he had seen before. Her skin carried a faint silver glow, as if moonlight lived beneath her veins. Her eyes, large and shimmering, reflected pain and hunger. Her legs were folded awkwardly beneath her. Twisted with weakness, she was trembling, her body too thin, her clothes ragged and stained with dust. She looked at him as if he were her last hope, and then she whispered words that struck deeper than any blade. "If you help me stand again, I will give you everything." The human's breath caught in his throat. Everything in his mind told him to turn away. This was not his world, not his fight. Helping her could bring danger, for where there was one alien, there might be others, watching, waiting. But his heart, stubborn and restless, did not allow him to leave. He took one slow step closer, his eyes scanning the shadows around them. No movement, no sound, only her fragile breathing. "Who are you?" he asked quietly, his voice rough from the dry air. The girl lowered her gaze, her lips trembling. "Forsaken. Left behind, my people. They did not want me." Her words broke into silence, as though she did not have the strength to speak more. She tried to lift her arm, but it shook and fell back against the stone. It was clear she had been here for days, maybe longer, abandoned and forgotten. The human crouched, still wary, still uncertain. "Why should I trust you?" he asked, his tone sharp. Her eyes lifted again, shimmering with tears that caught the moonlight. "Because I have nothing else." "Because you have nothing to lose," she said weakly. Her voice cracked, but her eyes held him with desperate honesty. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The human's thoughts raced. Helping her might pull him into something dangerous, something beyond his control, but leaving her meant carrying the weight of her voice forever, and he knew he could never escape that sound. A cold wind swept through the ruins, and he shivered. The girl's body trembled more violently, as if the chill was draining the last of her strength. Without thinking further, he stepped closer and extended his hand. Her small alien fingers brushed his palm, warm but trembling. Her touch carried both weakness and hope. Slowly, carefully, he pulled her up, her legs shaking as if they might collapse again. She leaned heavily against him, her body fragile yet clinging. For a moment she closed her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, human." But as he held her, he felt it, eyes in the shadows. Unseen but watching, the hairs on his neck stood on edge, and his instincts screamed danger. Somewhere in the darkness, something shifted, too quiet for ordinary ears. The girl's grip on him tightened, her fear matching his own. "Do not let go," she whispered urgently. "If you leave me now, they will take me back." His heart pounded. He wanted to ask who they were, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It was not just fear, it was terror, deep and unbroken. And in that moment, he understood that this was no ordinary plea for help. This was a beginning of something far larger, something he had unknowingly stepped into. He tightened his grip around her shoulders, his voice low, steady. "I'm not leaving you," he said. Her eyes widened in relief, though shadows still danced with hidden threats, and as the moons cast pale light over the ruins, the human realized his choice had already bound his fate to hers. Whatever everything she had promised, whatever danger lingered in the darkness, his life would never be the same again. The human supported the alien girl as they moved through the empty ruins. Her weight was light, too light, as if life itself had been drained from her bones. Every step she took with his help was shaky, uncertain, but filled with a desperate will to go on. The wind howled through the shattered buildings, carrying the whispers of a city long dead. He guided her toward the shell of an old shop, its broken walls offering a little cover from the cold night. There, he lowered her carefully onto a stone slab. Her body trembled as she caught her breath, her eyes never leaving his face. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, broken only by her uneven breathing and the faint crackle of dust settling in the wind. Finally, the human asked softly, "What happened to you?" Her gaze fell to the ground, and for a moment, he thought she would refuse to answer, but then, in a voice both fragile and haunting, she began to speak. "My people left me behind," she whispered, her silver glowing eyes filled with sorrow, reflecting a pain that words could barely hold. "They said I was weak, unworthy, a burden on their survival." She paused, swallowing hard as if each word cut her deeper than any blade. "When the war came, when the sky burned and the ships fled, they abandoned me here, left me to rot among the ruins." The human listened quietly, his chest tightening at her confession. There was no pride in her words, only wounds that had never healed. Her voice shook, carrying the echo of screams he could almost imagine. The cries of war, the roar of engines leaving her behind. He pictured her, a younger version of herself, reaching out for help as her people turned their backs. It was not just cruelty, it was betrayal carved into her very soul. "I tried to crawl after them," she continued, her tone breaking. "My legs. They failed me, they have always failed me." She touched her trembling knees with weak hands, shame flooding her face. "No matter how much I begged, no matter how much I screamed, no one came back." Her head lowered, tears glistening as they slid down her pale cheeks. "I was left with nothing but silence, nothing but shadows, until you—" The human's throat felt tight, and he struggled to find words. He had seen hardship before, but nothing like this, nothing so cruel, so final. The girl's pain was carved into her body, her voice, her very existence for a moment. He wondered what kind of people would forsake their own child, their own blood, and he could not stop himself from asking, "Why? Why would they do this to you?" Her answer came with bitterness sharp as broken glass. "They believed only the strong should live," she said, her voice trembling with both anger and sorrow. To them, weakness was shame, compassion was weakness, and mercy was a disease. Her eyes flicked up to meet his, glowing with fierce hurt. "I was not strong enough to fight, not strong enough to walk among them, so I was left behind like broken waste." The human clenched his fists unconsciously, anger burning inside him. It was one thing to fight a war, another to abandon the innocent, and yet as he looked at her fragile form, he realized she was far from broken. Her spirit, though scarred, still shone through the cracks of despair. That was strength. A different kind of strength, one her people clearly never understood. "You survived," he said at last, his voice firm. She blinked, surprised at the certainty in his tone. "You lived through the ruins, the hunger, the loneliness. You survived what they could not even face." Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to argue, but no words came instead. Her tears continued to fall, silent and endless. She looked away, whispering, "Only because I waited for someone to come, even when I knew no one would." Her hands tightened into small fists, trembling against her knees. "I told myself that if someone came, if one soul showed mercy, I would give them everything I have left, even if it was nothing." Her voice cracked, breaking under the weight of her promise. "And then, you appeared human?" The words hung heavy between them. The human felt the weight of her vow pressing on him like invisible chains. He had not asked for it, yet he could not escape it now. Her plea, her pain, her broken past, all of it had become part of his path. And though he still did not fully understand what everything meant, he knew one truth: leaving her was no longer an option. Outside the broken walls, the wind shifted again. For a brief moment, he thought he heard movement in the ruins beyond. Faint but deliberate, the girl's body stiffened, her wide eyes darting to the shadows. "They are still searching," she whispered, fear trembling in her voice. Her hand reached for his, clinging with sudden urgency. "If they find me again, they will take me back, and this time I will not survive." The human tightened his grip on her fragile hand, his jaw set with quiet determination. "You're not going back," he said firmly. The girl's lips trembled as a tear slipped free, but for the first time, a spark of hope flickered in her eyes. And in that abandoned ruin, beneath the broken past that haunted her, a fragile bond was forged, one that would soon be tested by the dangers lurking in the shadows. The night deepened around the ruins, and silence returned to the marketplace, but for the human, silence was no comfort. It only made every sound sharper, every shadow heavier. The alien girl leaned weakly against the broken wall, her silver eyes still shimmering with fear. She had told him enough of her story to haunt his thoughts, but not enough to explain the danger, yet he could feel it, pressing in on them like unseen hands. He studied her for a long moment, wondering if he had made the right choice. She was fragile, abandoned, and helpless, yet something about her presence stirred more than pity in him. There was weight in her words, a hidden truth beneath her trembling voice. She had promised him everything if he helped her stand again. But what could everything mean to someone who had been left with nothing? The girl noticed his silence, and her voice, soft as drifting snow, broke it. "You regret helping me," she whispered. The human shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "But I wonder what kind of danger follows you." Her eyes lowered, shadowed with sorrow. "Danger follows weakness in my world," she said bitterly. "They will come because to them, weakness must be erased." Her words made his chest tighten. It was not only her people's cruelty, it was their law, their way of survival, and by lifting her from the ground, by offering her kindness, he had stepped into their war. He leaned back against the stone, his gaze sweeping the darkness around them. He could almost feel eyes watching from far corners. Waiting, measuring, still, he did not let go of her hand. Kindness was dangerous, yes, but abandoning her would be worse. He had lived long enough to know that sometimes the greatest risks were not battles, but choices. And this choice, though reckless, was one he could not undo. The girl shifted slightly, trying to sit taller. Though her body trembled with weakness, her voice was low, almost ashamed. "I cannot walk without you." Her hands clenched tightly together. "If I slow you down, you can leave me, human." The words cut deep into him. Sharper than any blade, he turned to face her fully, his voice steady and firm. "I carried you out of the shadows. I will not abandon you now." Her wide eyes shimmered with surprise, and then softened with something unspoken. A fragile silence passed, filled with the weight of trust she had not given anyone in years. For the first time, she did not look like a forsaken child, but someone beginning to hope again. The human glanced at the horizon, where the faint glow of morning threatened to break the night. "We should move," he said. "Staying here will only bring trouble." With effort, he pulled her to her feet again, her thin arms clinging around his shoulder for balance. Her steps were slow, her weight heavy against him. But together they moved through the ruined streets. As they walked, he spoke softly, almost to himself. "You said they will come. Who are they?" The girl's voice trembled. "Hunters," she whispered. "Those who guard the law of strength. They track the weak. They make sure no one like me survives." The human's stomach twisted, anger burning through his veins. A people who hunted their own children for weakness. It was beyond cruel, beyond reason. The ruins stretched on, empty stalls and broken statues looming in the pale light. Every shadow felt alive, every whisper of wind like a footstep. Yet he did not stop. His grip on her firm, his pace steady. Every step was an act of defiance, a risk of kindness in a world that despised it. Finally, they found shelter in a half-collapsed tower, its walls cracked but strong enough to shield them from the wind. Inside, he lowered her gently onto a broken stone bench. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale, but her eyes glowed faintly as she looked at him. "You should not have done this," she murmured. "You will pay for helping me." The human met her gaze, unwavering. "Then let me pay," he said. "But you will live." Her lips trembled, torn between despair and gratitude. She lowered her head, whispering, "Why? Why risk yourself for me?" The human's eyes softened, his voice low but certain. "Because if I walked away, I would not be human anymore." The girl's breath caught in her throat, her tears falling silently. No one had ever spoken such words to her. No one had ever chosen her over safety. In that moment, she realized his kindness was not weakness. It was strength of a kind her people never understood. Outside, the wind shifted again, and faint footsteps echoed through the ruins. The human stiffened, his hand tightening around the hilt of his knife. The girl's eyes widened with terror. "They are close," she whispered. "They are coming." The human glanced at her, his voice steady. "Then let them come." For the first time, the girl saw something unshakable in his gaze. It was not fear, not doubt, but a fierce resolve that burned brighter than the cold moons above. And as the shadows moved outside, the human realized the truth. Helping her was not just an act of kindness, it was a choice that would shape his fate. A choice that carried risk, danger, and perhaps even death. But it was a choice he would make again. Without regret, the broken tower gave them shelter. But not safety. The human leaned against the cracked wall, his knife close, listening for every sound in the ruins outside. The alien girl sat on the stone bench, her body trembling from exhaustion, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. For a while, silence stretched between them, heavy with fear, heavy with questions neither dared to ask. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice soft and hesitant. "You should not stay with me, human. I am nothing but trouble." He turned his head toward her, his voice calm but firm. "If you were nothing, they would not be hunting you." Her lips parted, but no words came, only a faint flicker in her eyes, a flicker she quickly tried to hide. He studied her carefully, the way her hands shook as she pulled her ragged cloak tighter, the way her gaze lingered on the shadows as if she expected them to move. There was more to her story, he knew it, something she was keeping locked inside. "Tell me the truth," he said quietly. "Why do they want you gone so badly?" Her breath caught, her hands tightening into fists. "I already told you. I am weak, broken, useless to them," she whispered. But he shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "No, it's more than that." His voice grew sharper, though not unkind. "They would not waste hunters on someone who cannot even walk." The girl lowered her gaze, shame flooding her face. Her silence said more than her words ever could. Minutes passed before she finally spoke again, her voice trembling. "There is something inside me," she whispered. "Something they fear." She raised her hand slightly, and for a brief second, a faint shimmer of light glowed across her skin. It was soft like the glow of starlight. Beautiful but strange, the glow faded quickly, leaving her breathless, her hand falling back into her lap. Her eyes darted to him nervously, as if she expected him to recoil in fear. Instead, the human leaned closer, his voice steady. "What is it?" Her lips trembled. "It is power, human. A power I cannot control, a gift I never asked for." Her voice shook harder. "They fear it. They fear me, and so they left me to die." Her tears slipped down her cheeks, glistening in the faint light. "To them I was not only weak, I was dangerous. A risk that could not be allowed to live." The human's chest tightened as he listened. So it was not only cruelty, it was fear. Fear of something she carried inside her. He looked at her trembling form and saw not danger, but a child caught between survival and despair. Her so-called weakness was nothing but the shell of a strength her people could not understand. She raised her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze with a raw, unguarded look. "Do you fear me too, human?" she asked softly. The question hung heavy between them. He held her gaze, steady and unflinching. "No," he said firmly. "I do not fear you." Her eyes widened, a sharp breath escaping her lips. No one had ever answered her that way, not once in her life. Something shifted between them in that moment. A fragile bond, born not from pity, but from trust. Her body relaxed ever so slightly, her hands unclenching, her eyes shimmering not with fear, but with something close to hope. She whispered almost to herself, Why do you believe in me?" His answer was simple, steady, and true. "Because you are still here, still alive, still fighting." He paused, his voice softening. "And because I see strength where others are too blind to look." Her tears flowed freely now, but they were not only tears of sorrow. For the first time she felt seen not as a burden, not as a mistake, but as something more. She leaned toward him, her fragile frame trembling, and whispered, "You do not know what you are starting, human." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Then let me find out." The sound of distant movement outside broke the fragile calm. The human's eyes sharpened, and the girl stiffened, fear flashing across her face. "They are close," she whispered, clutching at his arm. But this time, he noticed something different in her touch. There was not only fear, there was also trust. She was not begging for life. She was clinging to the bond between them. He tightened his grip on his knife, his other hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Then we will face them," he said firmly. The girl looked into his eyes, and for the first time she believed him. In the shadows of that broken tower, hunted and surrounded, they shared something rare, a connection stronger than fear, a bond born in darkness. And though the night still carried danger, for the first time she no longer felt forsaken. The human realized it too. Helping her was no longer just kindness, it was a choice that bound them together. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side. And in the quiet before the storm, he understood a truth his people always carried. Sometimes the smallest act of compassion could spark the greatest change. The first light of dawn touched the ruined city. Turning the broken stones a dull gold, the human had not slept, his knife resting against his leg as he listened to the night fade into morning. The alien girl lay against the wall, her fragile body curled, her silver eyes half closed in weariness, but even in her weakness he could feel the tension in her, like a string pulled too tight. Then it came, the sound that ended all calm, a heavy thud in the distance, followed by another. The human stiffened, his hand tightening on the knife. The girl's eyes flew open, terror rushing across her face. "They are here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The hunters!" The sound grew louder, steady, deliberate. The march of those who carried no mercy. Dust stirred in the air as armored shapes moved between the broken stalls of the market. They were tall, their bodies wrapped in steel-like suits that gleamed faintly under the rising sun. Their helmets covered their faces, but their eyes glowed with a cold blue light. Each step echoed with power, with authority, with death. The human pulled the girl closer to him, guiding her deeper into the shadows of the tower. Her body trembled, her breath quick and shallow. "They will not stop," she whispered desperately. "They will hunt me until nothing is left." He crouched beside her, his eyes fixed on the approaching figures. "Then let them try," he murmured. The hunters spread out, moving with precision, their weapons gleaming with sharp edges and humming energy. One of them raised a hand, scanning the ruins with a device that pulsed with a low hum. The human's heart pounded, each pulse of the machine bringing the threat closer. The girl clutched at his arm, whispering, "If they take me, they will tear the power out of me piece by piece." Her voice cracked. "I would rather die than go back." He looked at her, and in that moment he saw not just fear but fire. She was ready to give up her life rather than fall into their hands. Something inside him burned hotter, sharper. "No one is taking you," he said, his voice steady, his grip on his knife unshakable. The hunters' footsteps drew closer, their voices low and metallic as they spoke to each other. Though the human could not understand the words, the tone was clear: command, control, execution. Suddenly one hunter stopped, turning toward the tower. The girl stiffened, her silver eyes wide. "They know," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. The human pushed her gently behind him, pressing his back to the wall as the first shadow entered the tower. The hunter's glowing eyes scanned the interior, the hum of his weapon filling the silence. The human's pulse raced, but he did not move. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he held his ground. He could not abandon her. Not now, not ever. The hunter stepped fully inside, towering over the human. The blue glow from his visor washed across the room, landing on the girl. She froze. Her breath catching, the hunter's voice rang out, cold and metallic, "Forsaken one. You cannot hide," the girl whimpered, clutching the human's sleeve. But before she could speak, the human stepped forward, his knife flashing in the pale light. "You will not take her," he said, his voice low but filled with fire. The hunter tilted his head, almost curious, then laughed, a hollow, echoing sound, a human protecting her. "Foolish," the hunter raised his weapon. But the human moved first, with speed born from survival. He lunged, slashing across the hunter's arm. The blade sparked against the armor, leaving only a shallow mark. But it was enough. The strike forced the hunter back a step. His balance broken, the human grabbed the girl's hand, pulling her toward the far side of the tower. The other hunters reacted instantly, their voices rising as they closed in. The ground shook with their steps, their weapons humming with deadly light. The girl stumbled, her legs weak, but she clung to him, her eyes filled with both terror and determination. "They will not stop," she gasped. "There are too many." The human turned his head, meeting her gaze. "Then we will make them stop." As the hunters closed around the tower, the girl's body trembled violently. Her hands glowed faintly, the same starlight shimmer he had seen before. She tried to fight it, tried to keep it inside, but the fear and desperation tore through her control. Light burst from her palms, flickering across the broken walls. The hunters froze for a heartbeat, their helmets turning toward her. One of them growled in their alien tongue, the cold metallic voice filled with urgency. The human shielded her with his body, but even he could feel the energy vibrating in the air. The girl's voice broke through the storm. "If you help me stand, I can fight." Her words were weak, but her eyes burned with desperate strength. The hunters advanced again, weapons raised. The human pulled her up with both arms, his voice sharp. "Then stand." Her body shook violently, her legs buckling, but she leaned against him. With his strength supporting hers, she pushed herself upright. Every inch was a battle, every breath a war. But when she finally stood, the light around her flared brighter. The hunters paused again, their steps faltering. The human's heart pounded, his knife ready, her light burning beside him. Together they faced the hunters, side by side. And in that moment, the bond between them was no longer fragile. It was unbreakable. Whatever came next, they would fight as one. The ruined tower shook as the hunters advanced, their heavy steps pounding against the broken ground. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, blue sparks dancing at the tips, ready to strike. The human held his knife firmly, though he knew it was small against their armor. Beside him, the alien girl struggled to remain on her feet, her legs trembling, her breath uneven. Yet her hands shimmered with faint light, flickering like stars fighting to break through storm clouds. The hunters moved closer, their voices sharp, mechanical, filled with command. One raised his weapon, pointing directly at her chest. The girl flinched. But the human stepped in front of her, his stance steady. "You want her, you'll go through me," he said, his voice low and unyielding. The hunter tilted his head, almost mocking, and pressed forward. But then the girl's voice rose, cracked yet filled with fire. "No," she whispered. "Not this time." She reached out, clutching the human's arm, her body leaning on him for strength. "Hold me," she whispered, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "Do not let go." He tightened his grip on her waist, pulling her closer, steadying her as her legs threatened to collapse. And then, with his support, she lifted her hands, her fingers trembling as if trying to command the storm inside her. Light burst from her palms, brighter this time, spilling across the cracked walls like waves of silver fire. The hunters froze for a moment, their visors reflecting the sudden glow. Then they reacted, raising their weapons higher, firing streaks of blue energy that cut through the air. The human pulled her down, rolling them both behind a slab of stone as the blasts shattered against it. The air burned with smoke and sparks, dust filling the ruined space. Her breathing grew ragged. But the glow in her hands did not fade. Instead, it grew stronger, steadier. As if the human's touch anchored her storm, she looked at him, her voice shaking. "They were right to fear me." The human met her eyes, his own voice firm. "They were wrong to leave you." She closed her eyes, focusing, and the light flared again. When the hunters moved to surround them, she pushed her hands forward with a cry. A wave of silver energy erupted outward, slamming into the armored figures. The ground shook as two of the hunters were thrown back, crashing into broken pillars with a thunderous crack. Their weapons sparked, their armor dented, their blue eyes flickering. The girl gasped, her knees buckling, but the human caught her before she fell. "You did it," he whispered, his voice rough but filled with awe. She shook her head weakly. "Not enough. More will come." Her eyes shimmered, fear and determination clashing inside them. "I need to stand fully human. With your strength, I can do it." The hunters regrouped, their leader stepping forward, his voice booming through his metallic helm. "You cannot escape, Forsaken One," he growled. "You are a danger, and you will be erased." The human helped the girl rise again, their bodies pressed together for balance. She leaned against him, trembling, but her hands lifted once more. This time, the light that poured from her body was not a flicker. It was a storm. Silver flames curled around her arms. Spilling onto the cracked ground, the ruined tower glowed, every broken wall shining with reflected brilliance. The hunters hesitated, their steps faltering. As if unsure whether to advance, the human felt the energy pulsing through her. Hot and fierce, it rattled his bones, shook his chest, yet he did not let go. He whispered into her ear, steady and strong, "I am here, I will not let go." Her voice broke with emotion. "Then I will not fall." With a sudden cry, she thrust her hands outward and the storm erupted. A blinding wave of energy exploded from her body, blasting into the hunters with unstoppable force. The ground split, dust and stone rising like a tidal wave. The hunters were hurled across the ruins, their weapons clattering from their hands. The air vibrated with power, the silence of the city shattered by her awakening. When the light dimmed, she collapsed forward. But the human caught her, holding her tight against his chest. Her body shook violently, her strength nearly gone. Yet her eyes opened, glowing softly, tears shimmering within them. "I can stand." Because of you, she whispered. Her words pierced him. Stronger than any weapon, he held her close, realizing the truth. The hunters had not just feared her power. They had feared what she could become with someone to believe in her. The dust settled and the hunters lay scattered. Struggling to rise, the girl leaned against him, weak but radiant, her silver light fading into a calm glow. They will come again, she said softly. They will not stop. The human nodded, his knife still in hand, his resolve sharper than ever. Then we will be ready, he said. And in that moment, as dawn spilled across the broken city, he knew the risk of kindness had become something far greater. It had become a bond that gave her strength and gave him purpose. The ruins lay in silence once more. Broken stones scattered across the ground where the hunters had fallen. Dust drifted in the golden light of dawn, glowing like tiny sparks in the air. The human stood with the alien girl in his arms, her body weak, her eyes half closed, her silver glow fading slowly. He could still feel the echo of her power vibrating through his chest. A storm that had shaken the earth itself, but now, she was only a trembling figure clinging to him, fragile and small. The hunters groaned in the distance, struggling to rise, but none dared to approach. Their leader's glowing visor flickered, his armor cracked from her blast. He looked at her with both fear and fury before finally giving the order to retreat. Step by step, they withdrew into the broken streets, their heavy steps fading into silence. For the first time, the girl was safe, not forever. But at least for this moment, she breathed heavily, her voice weak. They will come again, human. They never stop. The human tightened his grip, his jaw set. Then let them come again, he said. This time, they will find us ready. Her eyes widened faintly at his words, shimmering with something she had not felt in years. Belief. Belief that someone would not run, someone would not abandon her. He guided her to sit against a broken pillar. Lowering himself beside her, for a long moment neither spoke. Only the sound of wind moving through the ruins filled the air. Finally, she whispered, "You do not understand what you have done." Her silver eyes met his, trembling but filled with wonder. "You gave me strength when I had none. You made me stand when I thought I would never rise again." Her voice broke with emotion. "You gave me back my life." The human shook his head slowly, his voice quiet. "No, you already had life. You just needed someone to remind you of it." Her tears fell freely then. Glistening as they slid down her pale cheeks, she reached for his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his calloused palm. "You do not know what your kindness means in my world," she said softly. "Where I come from, mercy is weakness, kindness is shame. Compassion is forbidden." Her grip tightened. "But you showed me that kindness is strength." The human's chest ached as he listened. He had not set out to change anything. He had not thought of promises or rewards. He had only seen a broken soul in the shadows and could not walk away. Yet here she was, holding his hand as if it was the only anchor left in the universe. Her voice grew steadier, though her body still shook. "I told you I would give you everything if you helped me stand," she said. "And now, I will." Her silver eyes glowed faintly as she leaned closer, her words carrying the weight of a vow. "My strength is yours, my bond is yours, my life is yours. Human." Tears shimmered again, but this time they were not only sorrow, they were filled with devotion. The human swallowed hard, unsure of how to answer. He had never wanted to claim her life, never sought her vow. But he could not deny the truth. The bond between them was real, forged in fire and danger. "You do not owe me anything," he said quietly. "I only did what was right." Her lips curved into the faintest, trembling smile. "That is why I give you everything." Silence lingered, but it was no longer heavy with fear. It was filled with something new, something fragile and powerful. The broken ruins around them no longer felt empty, no longer felt like death for the first time. The girl did not feel forsaken, and the human did not feel alone. The sun climbed higher, painting the city in light, chasing away the shadows that had hidden her for so long. The hunters would return, yes, danger would always follow. But now they were not the same as before. She was no longer broken, and he was no longer just a wanderer. Together, they had risen from the ashes of despair, bound by trust and courage. The girl leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice soft as a sigh. "You gave me back my strength. Human," she whispered. "Now I give you everything I am." The human rested his hand gently on hers, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, But he also knew he would not walk it alone. And in that quiet dawn, among the ruins of betrayal and fear, the bond between a human and a forsaken alien girl became something greater than survival. It became a promise, one forged in kindness, sealed in trust and unbreakable in the face of any storm.